necessary, including public comments if desired. Once the questions and discussion has concluded, and when appropriate, I will ask for a motion and a second, and the board secretary will then call the roll for votes. Today's PowerPoint was not included in the packet. It is, however, available on SCV GSA website, and it will be shown during this go-to meeting. The board secretary will now be doing attendance by roll call, and each action item will be considered will be taken by roll call. So now it's up to you. You need to please take roll.
Okay, when I call your name, please say present. President Atkin, are you present?
Present.
Director Biden, are you present?
Present.
Director Cooper, are you present?
Present.
Director Goodside, are you present?
Present.
Director Keller, are you present?
Present.
Director Martin, are you present?
Present.
Vice President Natoli, are you present?
Present.
Back to you, President Atkins.
Thank you, Uni. Hi, Russ.
Hey, BJ. Long time, sir.
Welcome. Welcome to these meetings. Okay, we're going to move on to 1.3, public comment. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board on non-agenda items at this time? Hearing none, we're going to move on to.
Hello?
Yes, Lynn Flannery, do you have a comment you'd like to make?
Oh, no, I was just wondering if I was unmuted. Hi, everyone.
You're not, you're not muted, so.
Okay,
there it is.
all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now moving on, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Martin.
Good.
Natoli, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'd love to say all those in favor, but Uni, please call the roll.
President Atkin, your vote?
Yes.
Director Biden, your vote?
Yes.
Director Cooper, your vote?
Yes.
Director Goodside, your vote?
Yes.
Director Keller, your vote?
Yes.
Director Martin, your vote?
Yes.
And Vice President Natoli, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. This item has passed.
Very good. We'll move on to item 2, appointments and reappointments for the SCV GSA Board of Directors and alternate Board of Directors. Mr. Cole.
Yes, thank you, Chair Atkins. Nice to hear most of you and see most of you on the computer screen. It seems like it's been a while since we've had a meeting. This is the time of year where appointments are made by the representative agencies for the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. And it's fairly straightforward this year. There's only one major change on the GSA board and then one alternate position. And that is Russ Bryden for the County Waterworks District 36 will be replacing Adam Ariki on the board. And then for Santa Cruz Valley Water Agency, Lynn Plembeck will be replacing Matt Stone as an alternate for the Santa Cruz Valley Water Agency. So I didn't know if you'd all met Russ Bryden before, but figured we'd give Russ a chance to introduce himself and tell you just a little bit about himself, and we'll go with that. Russ, if you wanted to say a couple words.
Sure, I'll keep this very brief. Thank you all. Look forward to working with you. I don't know that Adam had a chance to tell you goodbye. Just a quick shake of the head if he did or did not. No. So with Public Works, one of the things we pride ourselves on is diversity, making sure that all of our managers have a variety of experiences. We feel it makes us better leaders. As you know, Adam has a wealth of knowledge in the supply world and the distributor world. Public Works has quite the stormwater business going on. And so the thought was to marry the worlds of supply, stormwater, with Adam's distribution experience. So Adam is now over the operations and engineering portion of the flood control district. I'm replacing Adam as the head of the county waterworks districts. Very briefly, my experience, many years ago, I served as the long-term planning responsible party manager for the flood control district, ran the IRWIMP, got to sit on the Santa Clarita Valley IRWIMP for quite a while, their board for quite a while. After that, I was the person that wrote Measure W. I was actually the staff person that led the team. Every single word in there, every single problem you can blame me for that. After that, I went to Sativa Water District. That was the state's first use of the administrator program, similar to receivership for that troubled water system down there in Compton. Did a little bit more in maintenance and operations, and I'm now the head of the county waterworks districts. So pleased to be working with you all.
Good. Great. Thanks a lot, Russ. There's no formal action for this item, Chair Atkins, so just a matter of the list. It was provided in your packet, and we'll look forward to having another year with this group, and hopefully getting to the point of a completed groundwater sustainability plan. So that's all I have on this item.
Excellent, thank you. Welcome aboard, Russ. We had the good pleasure to work together on the IRWM process, and always admired Russ's demeanor and professionalism. So looking forward to the same. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, item 3, agenda item 3, the consent calendar. Entertain a motion to approve and accept.
So moved, Director Cooper.
Second, Natoli, second.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Cooper and a second from Mr. Martin. Sorry, Gina.
That's all right. I
Okay.
believe Director Martin did it in first.
Got you by the wire there. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any public comment on this item? Hearing none, please take the roll, Uni.
President Atkins, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Biden, how do you vote?
Abstain.
Director Cooper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Gutzeit, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Keller, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Martin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice President Natoli, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. This item has passed.
Thank you, Uni. We'll move on to 4.1. And this is overview of the SCV GSA Groundwater Sustainability Plan Public Workshop held on August 5th, 2020. And this will be presented by Tamara. I believe it's Tamara.
It's Tara.
Tara, excuse me, Tara. Sorry, Tara. You're on. Tara
Okay,
Brown.
it's saying that in order to allow this to record, I need to quit. So I will be 1 moment.
Okay. Okay, well, in the meantime, how is everyone? Good. Okay, yeah, give me a thumbs up, Russ. You're looking good. Oh, 2 thumbs up. All right, good.
I did actually mean 1 moment.
Okay, good. Here we are. You're on, Tara. Sorry
Perfect.
for messing up your name earlier.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. And I just wanted to walk you through, first of all, what we did in order to get participation in the latest public workshop. We held the Stakeholder Advisory Committee meeting, pre-workshop meeting on July 22nd, and revised the technical memo, the presentation, and collateral to reflect any Stakeholder Advisory Committee suggestions. Then we reached out to the community through Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, constant contact. And we also did a print ad in the Signal, so we were trying to reach both print and digital, even though it's been kind of a fun, tricky thing with the current situation. And we also had a press release that was published in the Signal, SCV News, and KHTS. We then, in addition to that, had a digital ad in the Signal Daily E-Blast. So kind of total impressions is more than 600,000 impressions for those particular pieces. And that doesn't include the press releases.
Tara, I
When
can't see your screen. I'm not sure if that's just me. Can everybody else see
Oh.
your screen?
You
That's
can't
just
see my
white.
screen?
No.
It's just white.
Okay,
It's blank white. Sorry.
thank you.
We could see it before you clicked the actual presentation, Tara. So when it was just in standard mode.
Okay.
So why that? Sometimes it does that. I don't know. Yeah, now we can see it.
All right, I'll just leave it like this since the things that I went over didn't actually have a slide. It was just this screen, so I'll just keep it that way and try not to look ahead. In terms of actual meeting attendance, we had 54 participants, a similar number of questions as last time, so 18. Before that, just to kind of give you a brief sort of look back, we had 19 questions at the previous one. And then we had 3 feedback forms submitted, which is more than we had last time, which was only 2. And in addition, we, based on previous recommendations, and this is in the public workshop memo, had labeled all SAC members and SCV water staff in the Zoom meeting participants area so that people could see who was commenting and what relationship they had to the event. In a debrief following the meeting, it was noted that SAC's purpose is to provide, one of their main purposes is to provide that layman-friendly feedback so that we know if we've gone too technical or if something's not understood, we can address that in that time period before the public workshop. Because a lot of this feedback was about it not being as layman-friendly as the previous one had been. So, and the comments were made primarily from SAC members. So we were trying to make sure that at the next SAC meeting, we really embrace the idea that please provide all of your feedback so that we can make sure this is the best possible product prior to being presented to the public in terms of clarity and, of course, transparency. The comments themselves, the presentation feedback, I'm not going to read all of this and it's already in your board memo, but generally they wanted to understand a little bit more about Sigma and also the terminology that was being used. We did get one person who just thought it was the best presentation they'd ever seen, but we want to make sure that everyone has that same experience. In terms of general plan feedback, there was really only one comment, and it's that the east side of the river is not always disconnected because you do get rain. So we'll be looking into how to incorporate that feedback into the actual technical memo report in a way that makes sense. And then finally, the presentation questions. And again, I'm not going to read all of these, but generally they reflected the data. The data was the biggest question, and how we get the data and how are we getting data on the eastern wells. And so that will be addressed in the FAQ format that we discussed online. And it was addressed at the meeting itself. And that was kind of all the feedback and everything. It seemed like it went really well. So thank you so much for your time. Any questions?
Recognize any of the board members that have any questions?
Nothing. Thank you, Tara.
Okay, thank you, Tara. It was a good presentation. Is there any public comment on this item? Hearing none, I don't think we have an action there, so we'll move on to 4.2. Approval of use contingency fund for groundwater sustainability plan technical consultant, and authorize SCV Water Agency staff to seek SCV Water Agency board approval to enter into a revised contract with GSI Water Solutions to perform additional work. And that would be Mr. Cole, probably. No, Mr. Goots.
Yes, President Atkins. Excuse me, got a frog in my throat here. Good afternoon. I'll be presenting this item. I do not have a PowerPoint for this one. I'm just going to walk you through it. So as you introduced it, President Atkins, we're seeking your board's approval to use contingency funds for the GSP technical consultant and to authorize SCV Water to approach the SCV Water board and arrange for the contract amendment with GSI. Let me describe the fiscal makeup of some of these requests. So in June, the GSA board adopted its 2021 budget, and there were a number of changes in that budget from 1920. There was new revenue, about $891,000 from the Round 3 grant. There were some additional costs related to the Round 3 grant, including installation of data loggers for temperature and water level, and also some additional funds for the groundwater flow model peer review. We had $100,000 budgeted for that, but with the grant, we bumped it up to $125,000. We also had decreased project costs in the budget, which we brought to your board then. And then we also maintained the 15% contingency fee for the GSP technical consultant, and that's GSI Water Solutions. That contingency fee was set in 2018 when we were starting this new effort because GSI's scope is pretty lean and not set up to account for any significant scope increase. And we've had that. Development of the plan has taken a lot more effort in terms of meetings, workshops, and the stakeholder effort. So at that June meeting, when your board adopted the budget, it included the fees for the Round 3 grant support. We haven't issued a contract for that work yet, and that's one of the things we're talking about today. And also, we advised your board at that time that we now anticipated using contingency funds for GSI, but at the time we didn't have any good specific information. We just knew that it was something that was an emerging issue, and we'd have to get to the bottom of it and find out exactly what the details are. So what we did know at the time in June is that the scope had increased some. We weren't sure if it was going to be the new normal then, and it looks like it is. So we endeavored to dial in the specific budget impacts, and we told your board that we would come back to you when we did that. So since then, we've worked with GSI. Kathy Martin and I have worked closely together on GSI's work regarding the stakeholder effort. And we have a proposal from GSI for increased scope. And it includes a number of things. It includes additional money for project management. The staff report goes into some of the earlier assumptions about the project management effort and what we're doing today. Scope is increased. We've also added workshops that were outside of the original scope. And we've added a more robust stakeholder effort, which is outside of the original scope. So we have a proposal from GSI for this additional scope. It's $153,236. And we also have a proposal for the Round 3 grant support, which is $167,000. $160. The GSA's budget already includes these funds. And so we're here to recommend that your board authorize use of the contingency funds for this out of scope work and authorize SCV Water staff to go to the SCV Water Committee and ultimately the board and arrange for a contract modification that would allow GSI to continue this important work. And that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, good. Let's go through the board, see if there are any questions. Let's start with, hang on a second. Let's go with Ms. Natoli. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Virgutz, in the materials in our board packet, it mentions on page 12, task 1A, project management, scope increases result from, and the first item is a closer coordination on a number of complex matters not recognized in the original scope of work, and more frequent interactions with SCV Water related to both technical and stakeholder efforts. Could you expand a little on the complex matters? Was that specifically with the hydrology model, or was it other issues?
It's a number of issues, Vice President Natoli. It includes discussions about the workshops, the groundwater, surface water interconnection technical memos, discussions about the site access agreements, and it's a little bit broader than that. It includes subsequent discussions on subsequent workshops that we've had, and we've just needed a lot closer coordination with GSI to make sure that things go smoothly.
And then you also mentioned $147,000, I believe. Was that, is this something that's just gone in one ear of mine and out the other, and I don't remember us getting $147,000 somewhere?
I don't see $147,000 in the board memo. I may have misspoken. Okay.
That's why I was wondering about that. So I remember the 163, or I mean the 891,000 that we got as for grants. But then you mentioned there was another source of revenue that was already included in the budget. Could you expand on that for me?
The only other source of revenue, well, there are a few other sources of revenue included in the budget. The round 2 grant agreement, that's a revenue of about $416,000. Member agency contributions are included in the budget. Those are $20,000 per agency per year. And then there's additional revenue provided by SCV Water pursuant to the administrative services agreement that is in the budget as well. Don't remember the exact values, but it's a large number. I can get that for you if you'd like.
That's all right. But the 15% contingency that we already, if we're now asking for 153, that's cutting it sort of close for a contingency. Do we foresee more rounds of grants that we might be eligible to receive that will help us up that in case we need additional funds in the future?
I'm not catching all of your audio, but in terms of the contingency, yes, this is much of the contingency. The total amount of contingency is, I think, $187,000. So this is a large part of that. But it's considered sufficient for these tasks. You'll notice in the staff report, a lot of this contingency funding is going towards meetings workshops, things like that. And we expect that will be the new normal and that amount will be sufficient moving forward. Could there be something else that comes to us outside of that? I suppose it's possible, but we're not aware of anything that may come our way right now.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Vigutz. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Let's move on to Director Gutzeit.
I knew you were going to.
Ladies first.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Just a couple questions. I think, or comments. I think when this comes for additional discussion at the other agencies, it would be good to just have a sheet with the overall budget, not just the snapshot, to answer some of the questions like Vice President Natoli was talking about. If we could see how this fits in the grand scheme of things, that would be helpful. And then these are contingency funds, but it sounds like there were some scope changes in there. I guess I would like that to be clear too, especially if we hit in future discussions, if we hit the contingency fund cap, it's not really solely the consultant's fault because the scope has changed and we're asking them to do some more things. So I think if we emphasize that a little bit in future discussions, with our larger boards, I think that would be helpful.
Just so make sure I'm understanding you correct, to emphasize more that the increased scope is something that they've undertaken largely with our direction. Got it.
Right.
Thank you.
Not that they, messed up on their estimate and are running through contingency funds, but that we've added things that during this time period, we may draw down the contingency funds, but in future years, if the scope has changed, there may be a budget change because there has been a scope change. You see what I'm saying?
I do.
Okay.
I do. At some point, if we draw down contingency funds completely,
exactly,
we'll have to change the full budget.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right. Thank you very much, Director Gutzeit. Sorry to surprise you, Mr. Bryden, but you're next.
That's quite all right. I prepared in advance. I have nothing to add to this conversation or this piece of the conversation for today. Nothing that hasn't already been shared with the group. I do have concerns that it seems that we're eating most of our contingency up, but I'm not fully. I think that's where I'll stop for today. Nothing to add to the conversation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, Director Atkins. I think Director Natoli's comments or questions answered some of mine. I think when we got into this, that we knew that there are going to be changes. Nobody's ever prepared this kind of a plan before, and it was going to be very complicated. And it was breaking new grounds all the way across the state in doing this. So I'm comfortable with that. I think that the added costs are certainly something that we expected along the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Let's move on to Mr. Keller.
BJ, was that me you called for?
Yes, sir.
Repeat the question, please.
We're at 4.2. Mr. Verghese just made a presentation asking for
Oh no, I absolutely concur. I absolutely concur with the comments that have been made. We are still at a point in time we're in uncharted water, and there's going to be other issues that come before us. And I absolutely concur with the comments that have been made by both Jana and Bill.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, President Atkins. And yes, many of the comments that you've already heard, I agree with. Having seen this from both sides of the table, so to speak, I know it's difficult when you're doing something that you've never done before and perhaps has never been done before. I think we all understand that professional labor is not cheap and it's not free. And I do appreciate that the staff kept the original proposal lean. I think that's helped control the cost overall. And I do also believe that staff is well aware of the effort, the level of effort that the consultant is putting into this. So I trust that we've made an accurate and fair assessment of the labor and the effort that's been put forward. And I support moving forward with the requested change.
Very good, thank you. And my comments mimic those of some of the balance of the board. I am concerned that we are going to exhaust our contingency funds before we get out of these uncharted waters. So to the degree you can address that in future meetings, Mr. Vergoots, I think it would be appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to public comment on this issue. Are there any public comments? Hearing none, we're going to have to vote on this one, so I'll entertain a motion to accept this particular item, 4.2.
I'll move it.
I think Gina beat you to the punch there, Mr. Cooper. So I'll take a first from Ms. Natoli and a second from Mr. Cooper. Is that appropriate? Does that work for you too? Okay.
That's appropriate.
Good. Thank you, Mr.
I think
Keller.
it was Director Keller.
Oh, it was Mr. Keller. Okay, so Ms. Natoli, then Mr. Keller. And that's the first and the second. Any further discussion? Okay, Uni, please take the roll.
President Atkins, your vote?
Yes.
Director Biden, your vote?
Yes.
Director Cooper, your vote? Was that a yes, Director Cooper?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Gutzeit, your vote?
Yes.
Director Keller, your vote?
Yes.
Director Martin, your vote?
Yes.
And Vice President Natoli, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. This item passes.
Thank you. Question for Mr. Bunn. You there, Mr. Bunn? Tom Bunn.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Okay. Item 4.1. It was a great presentation by Tara Bravo. And in my notes, I was supposed to call for a motion, but I saw that as an information item. Do you agree?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so there was no reason for a motion.
What action was recommended by the board or for the board?
No, it's in the action items, but I just saw it as an informational item,
Right.
not something subject to vote. Okay, then we'll move on. I just wanted to ask that procedure question. Let's move on to 4.3. And this is the Mr. Vergoots show. 4.3, you're up.
Thank you, President Atkins. Okay, moving on to item 4.3. This is the first such item that has been brought to the GSA board through a recommendation from the Stakeholder Advisory Committee. And the board memo goes into some detail. I'll quickly summarize it. It includes background information about the Bouquet Reservoir and agreements about releases. The reservoir is actually upstream of the GSA boundary. It is operated by the Department of Water and Power as a storage facility for the aqueduct. And being a reservoir, it intercepts runoff and underflow from the watershed. And to keep the watershed healthy. There are agreements in place to allow ongoing release of that impounded water. There was an agreement in 1932 which described releasing approximately 2,200 acre-feet of water a year, and then the agreement was updated in 1978 to sort of change the timing of when these releases took place, having larger releases during April through September each year. So far so good, but LADWP hasn't been able to adhere to the agreements because there are impediments to doing so, principally the channel. Several years ago, a debris flow entered Bouquet Canyon, Bouquet Creek, downstream of the dam, and LADWP has had to reduce the discharges because of that. They don't want to create flooding and other issues. And they've been unable to get in there to clear the debris. And because this has gone on for many years, over time, the resulting amount of water not released is approximately 11,000 acre-feet. So it's a significant amount of water. Many have been working on this issue. There's a working group that's formed from Los Angeles County Department of Public Works, the Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife, California Department of Fish and Wildlife. So both US and federal, of course, the Department of Water and Power, and they continue to look at options, but nothing has been done. More recently, LADWP filed a water rights application to impound and release local water in the reservoir. Two groundwater pumpers in the canyon intervened in this proceeding. And the GSA's Stakeholder Advisory Committee has brought this issue up, and they've asked staff to prepare this report for your board and recommend potential actions to help in resolving this situation. Potential actions include a plan to recover the impounded water, contingency planning for continued or protracted inability of LADWP to perform its obligations under the agreement. And though this was brought to the stakeholder, well, initially raised with the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, now brought to your board, we feel SCV Water may be a more appropriate agency to explore these remedies because it has an ability to move water around. It has a highly interconnected distribution system. Of course, the GSA on its part has an interest in making sure that this is resolved as well because it does impact the ability of pumpers to use the basin. And the GSA may be, in this role that we're talking about today, can help facilitate solutions to this problem. So the staff report provides a number of recommendations for your board, and I will summarize these. I don't want to do this from memory. One, that your board request SCV Water develop options to address these impacts from the loss of the local water supplies, including but not limited to cooperating with United Water Conservation District and LADWP to look at solutions, and assigning an SCV Water representative to participate in working group discussions to resolve this. Item 2, receive SCV Water staff updates to the board on progress towards resolution. And item 3, directing the General Counsel to monitor progress of the water rights application and report on opportunities to participate further in that proceeding to the end of finding a cure for the loss of this supply. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. And of course, our counsel, Tom Bunn, is on the call today too for legal issues. Thank you.
In fact, thank you, Mr. Vergoots. Mr. Bund, do you want to add anything at this point, or shall I just run through the board?
I don't think so. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Vergoots did a good job of summarizing both the situation now and what's being recommended. I would second the idea that CV Waters, that it's likely that SCV Water will be able to offer some solutions based on its own ability to move water around and so forth. So maybe they're a more appropriate agency to take hold of this.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go from the bottom up. Mr. Martin, do you have any comments or questions?
Thank you, President Atkins. Yeah, it appears to me that the recommendation is a series of steps where SCV Water would participate in some discussions and some planning of potential solutions, not any particular action at this point. So I think it could contribute to a solution, and I think I would support moving forward with the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Keller.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. If I may share with you, it's been about 3-4 years ago. I attended any number of meetings regarding this particular issue. And one of the things that I found very disturbing is that for years, and I mean years, there was no issue here. We had some rainstorms, we had debris put into the waterway up in Bouquet Canyon, and it was dealt with, it was alleviated, it was removed. And then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, we found a sickleback fish. Well, if you found one, it had been there all throughout these years anyway. But no, we stop everything now. We don't remove any debris. We're going to cut back the water and look at the impacts and look what it has caused to the citizens up and down Bouquet and including into the area there of Lower Bouquet where we have Lark Ranch and a number of property owners. You know, up in the Bouquet Canyon areas, as we go south from the reservoir, those national forest cabins, they've been there, guys, they were built in the 20s and 30s. The people that own them, they're supposed to be weekend retreats. Well, I'm going to tell you something. The reality is most of the people living there are living there full time. They're not retreats. It is a lower income area. But no, we're going to take this whole water situation, we're going to redo it, and we're not going to provide the water that we have in the past. And then because of the debris, if we go beyond a certain level of so many acre feet, what we're doing is flooding Bouquet Canyon. And that is the ingress and egress of the people living there. And by the way, there's approximately 80, 90 cabins in that area where these people live. Now going below that, as we head to Vasquez Canyon and all of that area, we've got a number of private properties. They all depend on wells, all of them, including Lark Ranch. And we all know what Lark Ranch is about. And no, now we have starved all of them. They do not have a water table that will provide water for their wells. And I got to tell you, this is one of those occasions when I tell you, this is ridiculous. And the meetings I attended, and there was no less than probably a dozen of them, I just found it appalling with a narrow perspective on addressing the issues, which at one time were of no issue at all. We have one issue, but by the way, it had happened before, but we can't clean out this stream bed because somebody found a sickleback. Well, like I said, the sicklebacks have been surviving it for years, but we have absolutely damaged all of these people. And this is one time I tell you, If we can roll up our sleeves and have an impact on this, we need to do it and do what's right for all these property owners, families. Lark Ranch, they are paying astronomical amounts of money to have water trucked in that never was necessary for decades, but it is now. And this is an example that I'm not, when I see issues of this kind, I'm not too quiet. This is too damn much government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keller. Appreciate your opinion. And let's move on to Mr. Cooper.
Well, thank you, Councilman Keller. That was excellent. You know, this is a very frustrating problem that's been going on up there for years and years. You know, Supervisor Antonovich tried to get the thing cleaned out. I thought he had made some headway, and then of course he moved on, and Supervisor Barger's in there now. This is a shame that we can't clear that thing out. Actually, I think it would build better habitat for the stickleback if we were able to clear the thing out and get water running down the creek than what it is now. Whatever we can do to fix that, I think is really important. That's 2,000 acre feet a year. Those homes up there use a very small portion of that. They probably use 100 acre feet. The rest of that goes to our groundwater basin in our valley. And so that's water that we're losing from our valley and from United Water Conservation District as well. Not only is it water we're losing, it's extremely good water. It's water from the Owens Valley. It's very low in minerals, very low in salt. The issues that we have downstream in the basin with salt, this will help alleviate some of that by putting better water in. So whatever we can do, and I do think Santa Cruz Valley Water Agency is probably the best to take the lead in this, but it's one that we really need to step up and do. And as the GSA is a good reason to do that.
May I, BJ, make one more comment?
Go ahead, Mr. Keller.
I also want to add a comment. Over the years, particularly throughout the 90s, and I can't tell you the number of occasions I had to go up that road. And I got to know a lot of the cabin owners and so on and so forth. But one of the things I would always notice and really appreciate on the weekends, there would be a mother and a father and a son or a daughter, and they would have a fishing line in that creek because it was also stocked. But no, we can't have that. We had to stop that by cutting down all of the water that had heretofore been presented down that creek bed of Bouquet was, cut to about a third, and that no longer existed. It was a quality of life thing for our families throughout Santa Clarita. It was a beautiful thing, but no, we stopped that. And I think one of the most objectionable things that I heard in my meetings that I attended, well, we're going to gate Bouquet because when we have to release a little bit more water, it's going to go over the road, and we can't have that. So we're going to shut off all these people who live in Bouquet Canyon. They won't even be able to go to their cabins. And that's why I want to reiterate, folks, this is an example of government not doing its job. It's hurting our citizens in so many ways, and how unfortunate. So I really stand strong on our taking as strong a position as we can to take this back to where we had common sense and judgment involved with our water resources and protect our community and our citizens. Thank you.
And one more, Mr. Atkins, is,
Go ahead, Mr. Cooper.
If we can't clean out the stream bed, then maybe we got to look at relocating the road. Move the road from where it's at and let the waterway establish its course down there.
Okay, I've got some opinions on it, but I'm going to wait. Mr. Bryden.
I bet you do.
So I have nothing to add to this conversation other than in a previous life here at Public Works, I was involved with the road being washed out, with the gating, trying to understand that issue. So I am supportive of our agency or the agency getting involved with this and seeing what else we can bring to the table. That's it.
Excellent, thank you. And Ms. Gutzeit.
Yeah, a couple of comments. What do you mean? I think I was looking in here for when you said the local pumpers intervened, Mr. Vergutz. In what manner were they intervening? Were they opposing, supporting? What does that mean exactly? You're muted.
I don't know specifics other than that they were concerned about the water rights application and that it may not provide the water that it described. I did have a brief conversation with one of the stakeholders. I don't know if he's at our meeting today, but he could perhaps expand on it.
Okay, yeah, and I know some people roll their eyes when I say our staff report should be clearer and plain English, but yeah, things like that, I think to clarify in the future would be good. I'm going to reorder my comments here. Second, I do appreciate Councilman Keller's comments, and for the people that well, I guess Russ does know the canyon if he knows about that road, but anybody that hasn't been there, I remember the days back when I used to ride farther when there was fishermen, and women and children in that canyon regularly, and it was a beautiful place to ride because it was so shady and so cool, and the sound of the water was just very refreshing on a hot day. We often went up San Francisco, which is the hot side, no shade there, and you come down Bouquet and it's just gorgeous. So I would like SCV Water to look into this. I think it's a good agency to handle it. One thing I'm thinking of, and I Googled it while I was waiting, is the Devil's Gate Dam. I mean, look at how long that issue took to resolve in the Pasadena area, where they're finally doing some mud clean out there. But I think the bottom line is this balance between fish and game and water supply and public safety needs to be resolved. And I've often said that I wish SCV Water, not that we don't have enough on our plate, but that we somehow work on that resolution, because it affects us in so many areas. It greatly affects our ability to do recycled water too. And I think to keep hitting the same wall when somebody says fish and game and then we all throw up our hands and are paralyzed, that is not a good state to be ongoing. I mean, these people are losing property value. That I haven't, like I said, I haven't been there in a while, but if that beautiful habitat of that canyon is being ruined, I think there's something being ignored there in that discussion. So one side shouldn't prevail. We need to bring it to a resolution, and I hope the water agency can do that. My last question or comment, and maybe Mr. Bunn can answer this. I wonder about the role of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee recommending different things to the board. This could be a slippery slope if a lot of time and a lot of issues were brought up. Now, admittedly, this was the first issue. It's a very good issue. Staff did spend time on it, but it was important to get the background to make a decision. However, I want to make sure that going forward, we know what the GSA job is, and if things are brought up that are not our job, but another agency's job, say thank you for your thoughts. You know what, we think you should talk to this other agency. Because we have a tight budget for the GSA. We just went through that, and if we spend a lot of time on other things that are out of our scope, we're going to hit our, have our budget problems too. So I would just like to be, aware of what range of things can be brought up and staff spend time on. I don't know if Mr. Bunny has any comments now, but otherwise it's just a thought that we need to watch spending time and staff dollars on things that may not be our purview.
I would like to respond to that if I may, Mr. President.
Go ahead.
The whole purpose of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee is to give public input or stakeholder input to the GSA board. And that's given a very high priority under SGMA. You're absolutely correct, though, that they should not be giving advice on matters that are outside the scope of the GSA's function. I'll tell you that I so far have attended all the Stakeholder Advisory Committee meetings and have participated in discussions of what's an appropriate comment to make to the GSA board and what isn't, and I intend to continue to do that. So, but paying attention to your comment, absolutely.
Okay, that's good to know, because I know I've personally been asked, like, can we comment on this project? Can the GSA do this? Can the GSA do that? There's interest in doing all sorts of things. And I just want to use caution, because potentially we could do all sorts of things, right? But our task at hand and our budget is fairly limited. So, I mean, if in the future, if this could just be punted to SCV Water, that would be fine with me.
Very good. Ms. Natoli.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through the president to Mr. Virgutz, let me see if I understand. The tie to the GSA would be releases from the reservoir contribute to the groundwater with the basin. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I had 3 questions that I was going to ask and not to ask right. I want to try and keep this specifically focused on the recommendation, which I intend to approve and yes for. But my concern at number 2 says that the board receive, to number 2 of the recommendation, the board would receive SCV Water staff to the board on progress toward solution. So in my understanding, from while SCV Water would be working, the GSA board would have no real authority to direct SCV Water to do anything or to take any action in resolving the water releases. Is that your understanding of the work, Mr. Virgutz?
Yeah, as structured on item number 2, those would be information updates to the GSA board.
Because I do agree that I don't know specifically what the board would do, since we are involved with preparing our mission is to prepare the GSP, prepare the plan, and if the water is not coming to the basin right now, it doesn't contribute to something that's in the plan. Whether it might start flowing again in the future, seems that should be up to whatever committee is formed to work on resolving the issue. So I don't have any other questions. I just wanted to clarify those points, and any other questions that I may have had today, I am just going to hide away somewhere. Maybe it would come up at some other, but rather than detract motion that's before, I'll hold on to questions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I've been approached by Lark Ranch personally. They used to be on wells because groundwater flowed to them through this discharge or release from Bouquet Reservoir. And they lost their wells years ago and had to start trucking water. And the approach they made to me was, can Lake Water Agency or SCV Water Agency provide water? Can we make an interconnection and get water to Lark Ranch? And I think we all know what Lark Ranch is and how it's kind of incumbent on us to see what we can do to help them when we can. And I'm going to ask Mr. Cole, did that interconnection ever take place? Were we ever able to get water to Lark Ranch?
That is a process that still continues. So the direct answer right now is no. They are not connected to the public water system, so they continue to truck water in to that operation. We are making advancements on getting a pipeline up to that area, but it is reliant on grant funding to pay for Lark Ranch's portion of the facility. We are making progress on that, and I'm hopeful that in the next year we'll be able to be putting that pipeline in. So it's fully designed. It has had environmental approval, and it's awaiting funding for that project.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cole. That's helpful. This is an interesting situation. And in my opinion, I'm sensitive to what Director Gutzeit suggested in terms of how we should approach this, but I align with Mr. Keller. We've got to infuse or inject ourselves to the degree appropriate. And here's the reason. I personally have a friend who has one of those cabins, and he happens to be a fisherman. Mr. Keller, I think you're not on mute, sir. I personally have a friend who has one of those cabins, and there are only 80. And Mr. Cooper's right, they're probably only using 100 acre-feet. So of the 2,000 acre-feet that's supposed to be released, and it gets starved, the process, I'll just cut to the chase. The friend I have is a fisheries biologist. He knows exactly where those three-spined unarmored stickleback are and where they're not. And the process has stalled. He has approached me personally and said, all we've got to do is spend $50,000 in the right place, and the entire problem goes away. And the flows can be restored. And there's no chance for flooding any longer, flooding across the road, and it no longer is a public safety issue. So it's a simple fix. And we've just got to get the players together and get it right. And to me, even though the discharge or the release occurs outside the purview of the sustainability agency, it directly impacts some groundwater pumpers in our agency area. So it is something that in terms of sustainability, we should inject ourselves on. So I have a question for, I don't have a problem with SCV Water holding, carrying our banner, but I think the GSA should be intimately involved in the resolution. On number 2, the status reports. Mr. Vergoets, is that something that SCV Water staff was going to do, and on what frequency?
That's something that SCV Water staff would do, and we would do it quarterly, the regular frequency of these GSA meetings.
Okay, and what can we do as an agency, and I'm asking Mr. Cole more than Mr. Vergoets, what can we do as an agency to inject ourselves appropriately, because this is a problem that should be solved. It should have been solved a decade ago. This is ridiculous. Mr. Keller is absolutely right. Go ahead, Mr. Cole.
Well, first and foremost, it starts by getting involved, right? So we're going to need to prioritize our involvement. in a way that is effective. So as Director Natoli pointed out, there are a lot of different groups involved in this process, and we are one of those groups. So, you know, I think we are uniquely positioned in those groups because of, and I'm speaking of the water agency now, just so you know. I think we're uniquely positioned to have good discussions with the contract holder, which is United and BWP, in how to resolve a long-term solution. But I will tell you, a fully federally protected species is really difficult, and that's what we're running up against on this. And so I know there are a lot of people that all are trying to pull in the right direction, but certain laws don't allow a lot or any flexibility, and it's things like that that are going to have to take a more comprehensive solution. Something that, like Director Gutzeit pointed out earlier, on, you know, balancing the solution between environment, safety, and water resources. And so, but when you start doing that, it becomes very complicated. And so I don't know that I have the silver bullet for the process, but the first step is going to be to get more involved with it.
My opinion is, technically, and I've done some study on it, is the environmental element to it, the portion on the environment in terms of the stickleback. There's some technical errors in the biological opinion. There are some problems with the way the Fish and Game has approached this, in my opinion, and the U.S. Forest Service. So to the degree we can inject ourselves to get to resolution quickly, I would like to see staff bring it back at our next meeting and see where we are. And I'd like it to be an agenda item going forward. This is something we've got to help solve.
BJ, may I weigh in a little bit further? And I know
Go
I've
ahead,
probably
Mr. Keller.
taken too much time. I feel very passionate about this matter because I also know a number of people that have been affected by this, not the least of which is Lark Ranch, and they don't have, you know, unlimited resources when it comes to financial costs for that operation, which is so important for so many people. But I feel very passionate that we should weigh in to whatever extent we can to resolve this matter for so many interests, the people in the cabins, the people down below, water resources. It goes on and on and on. I got to tell you, and I know there's people on here that are probably a little more of an environmentalist than I am. I haven't figured out one thing as Sickleback has contributed to society, but I damn well have figured out what people and families and children have contributed to society. And I don't want to do anything to harm them or take away from them. I frankly could give a hell less about that damn Sickleback, that we sat here and deprive these families of the ability to grow and be capable of sustaining themselves. And when you look at those cabins, if you don't have a water resource, do you know what those cabins are worth? Zip, nada, nothing. The people down below, the ramifications from this, and that's why I've made a comment, too much government, how about irresponsible government? And we need to get on this and do everything we can. And I recognize to some degree it's outside of our area of purview. Well, let me just tell you something. So was the chloride issue. And look what has happened to Santa Clarita as a result of chloride going all the way to Ventura in the ocean. So I don't have any problem rolling up our sleeves and going to work on this. Thank you very much.
Director Adams, can I add something?
Go ahead, Ms.
I just want to clarify, if it didn't come through in my stream of consciousness commentary, I agree with Director Keller and with you that we should work to resolve this issue. And I know actually not just Lark Ranch, but also individual landowners there that have been affected by this. And it's great that Lark Ranch may have a solution, but there's a lot of people that don't. So I do support us getting involved, but by us, I mean SCV Water. And I support SCV Water actually taking a stronger role on all of these issues that affect our water supply. So this might be a good way to meet people that are making these decisions that affect not only this, but also our recycled water. Probably, and same people might be involved in the chloride. I think we should get involved, but my comment is to we is SCV Water, not the GSA.
So the role of the GSA is to simply ask SCV Water to get involved and then participate to the degree appropriate for the GSA. So it would seem to me the only action here is for Mr. Cole to pen a letter that I would sign prompting SCV Water to take immediate and continuing action and offering to the GSA board and any of our resources, which are meager, but if, to the degree we can help, we want to see a solution. That's the thrust of the letter. Does that make sense to this board?
Yes.
Absolutely does to me.
Yep.
Okay, then I'm gonna, I don't know that we need a motion on that. Mr. Bunn, do we need a motion to direct staff to pen a letter?
Is there going to
no,
be
you
public comment?
I'm sorry, you needed you that? Okay,
President Atkins, you have to ask for public comment before motion.
I will.
Thank you.
We didn't go there. So
No, a consensus will work.
consensus will work, then if there's nothing further from the board, we're going to open it to public comment.
This is Sandra. Tell me, I please speak.
Yes, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to mention that I am on the GSA Stakeholders Advisory Committee, and I think this is very appropriate for our group to bring up to the GSA because we are an input group. We're not asking for money. We just want it to be addressed. That's the first thing. I agree there needs to be a solution. In fact, 7 years ago, I was working with Assembly Member Tom Lackey and Senator Sharon Runner, and there was actually legislation to address the issue. And I was under the impression at that time that a solution had been reached and then it just needed to be put into action. So I have no idea what has happened with that legislation, but I know it's there. And I hope that the GSA, SCV Water, somebody can help ameliorate this problem. Thank you. Oh, excuse me, with a balanced approach.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Catella. Good comments. Any other public comment?
Stacy Fortner.
Go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Sure. I just have a couple of quick questions and then a comment. My question is mainly about the advisory committee, and I'm just wondering if any one person on the advisory committee has any personal gain in moving forward with this project. And then my second question is if this project, never mind, scratch that. And my comment, I guess, would be, I hope that all of your friends and their property values are taken care of. Wow. And I think I'll just yield back my time. And yeah, that's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll tell you that most of you know that I've lived here most of my life. And as a child, I would go up in that canyon and enjoyed myself immensely. And it was a weekly experience for me. And it's changed drastically over the years, primarily as a function of this water not being discharged, not being released. And it was falling into disrepair before this problem, but the set of problems just grew and grew until now we have this insurmountable situation that Lark Ranch cannot even use their wells. That's ridiculous. So we've got to do what we can do as a state sustainability agency, a groundwater sustainability agency, to influence the group to get back together and find a solution. That's what we've got to do. That's my opinion. So is there any further public comment?
Yes, it's Lynn Plambeck. I have something to say.
Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
You all have been doing quite a lot of huffing and puffing about how the fish doesn't matter, and I would just like to suggest to everyone that it is a fully protected species, and I don't think you're going to arrive at a solution with that concept, with that approach to it. So I would ask that you remember that extinction is forever, and that's what that fish is facing up there, and that's why there's some issues, and it's facing that throughout the, and one of the reasons is also that it's would affect how fully protected species are addressed in other areas. So it's not just the fish there, it's trying to look at finding room for all of God's creation everywhere. And so I just, of course it needs to have a solution, and I know the gate got put up after there was somebody lost their lives, I believe, because they ran into the slick on the road. So there's sort of some parts of this that aren't being fully taken into account. And when we, as the water agency, goes to the table to discuss this, I hope that there won't be such an aggressive approach to that, because I don't think it's going to get us anywhere. That's all I have to say.
I think Mr. Cole is completely capable of being, first I know that he's sensitive to the issue, and he's completely capable of penning the appropriate letter. My comments were not discounting the stickleback in general. I know that the area that my friend lives in is not habitat, and much of Bouquet Canyon is not habitat for the three-spine unarmored stickleback. And there are some technical issues with the biological opinion. I know that for a fact, but notwithstanding those challenges, I think as a sustainability agency, we've got to inject ourselves to the degree that's appropriate and prompt SCV Water to do whatever it is they can. So are you clear on what your marching orders are, Mr. Cole?
Yeah,
Director Atkins, is my question going to be addressed on the advisory committee members being personally benefited by this project? Will that be addressed?
I'm going to direct Mr. Cole to get you an answer. We're not going to do that on a give and take process during this meeting. So Mr. Cole, please take up Ms. Fortner's question independently. Go ahead, Mr. Cole.
Thank you, sir. Can I add something briefly?
Go ahead, Ms. Goodtime.
I think a lot lately, people are thinking in terms of black and white issues. And I actually didn't hear, well, the board did not say, and Mr. Cole, I know deals very fairly with all the issues, anything about not respecting the regulations on the stickleback. We are looking for a solution that takes into account those regulations and the human needs of the area and the safety needs of the area. So I don't appreciate the generalization that we do not care about the environmental impacts, because we do. And as far as personal stake in the area, she was asking about the stakeholder group, but I have no personal stake in the area. But I do feel for people that own land that maybe have been in generations, and then through no fault of their own, no longer can use that land. And I think that that's something that many empathetic people might feel because of bureaucracy. So hopefully we find a solution that meets the requirements of the law and gets some people their contractual water back. That's it.
That's the goal. I think Mr. Cole, you're clear on that, right, sir?
Yeah, the staff will draft a letter that will come from the GSA board requesting that SCV Water engage in trying to find a resolution for this issue. So we'll
Yeah.
draft that.
Call.
And
We want to call the group, the working group you spoke of at the outset. We want to call that working group together. I guess Mr. Vergoots brought it up. We want them to meet and move this whole process forward as quickly as possible.
we will draft a letter.
Okay.
I would like to see, if I may speak up, BJ, I'd like to see
ahead.
that letter before it is sent out, because to me, the letter needs to have a very strong position of helping to protect the people, the owners of the cabins, Lark Ranch, on and on and on, for the reasons and justification. So I just don't want to let it, we've got to resolve the problem. No, it needs to be written in such a manner that we take a very absolute strong position. And we need to resolve this for the benefit and the safety of the public. I just, to me, like I say, I've been involved with this for a long time, and I feel very passionate about it. I know you folks can tell that by my discussion. But this is not just, oh, we'll put a letter in. No. We need to put a letter in there that makes it very clear that this cannot be tolerated or accepted. This is important to our citizens. And I guess enough said, but I feel very strong about this.
Mr. Bunn, you're going to have to be involved too, I'm sure. So I'm good with Mr. Keller and I and Mr. Cole, Mr. Bunn working on it. Is everyone else comfortable with those four working on it? Would you like to, Mr. Cooper? Okay. Okay. We're good? All right.
Glad to wherever you need.
There we go. Okay, thank you. All right, if there's nothing further from the board, nothing further from the public, we're going to move on to 4.4.
Oh, no, we need to make a motion. We need a motion.
Do we? Who's asking for that? We need to make a motion. Mr. Bond, do we need a motion since we're just giving staff directive?
We have, Mr. President, we have not made a motion or on item 4.3. There's
I'm saying.
There's a recommendation.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Natoli.
You say there's a recommendation for item 4.3, and I don't recall giving a item 4.3 before we move on to 4.4.
There is a financial consideration. Am I right? Yes.
At present, it's just the staff time. But since Ms. Natoli has requested a motion, I think that's probably the best way to do it.
Okay. I have no problem with that.
And you do have it laid out in that recommendation exactly what's going to be expected of the staff, and I think that's helpful as well.
Are the board members clear on the nature of the motion which would be entertained?
Yes.
And I'll entertain such a motion, please. I need a motion.
So moved.
Okay, so we have a motion from Vice President Natoli and a second from Mr. Cooper.
Ms. Goodside.
Any further discussion? Oh, that was Ms. Goodside. Sorry, Natoli Goodside. 1, 2. Sorry about that. Any further discussion on the part of the board? Okay, Ms. Kang, go ahead.
President Atkin, your vote?
Yes.
Director Biden, your vote?
Yes.
Director Cooper, your vote?
Yes.
Director Goodside, your vote? Director Goodside?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Director Keller, your vote?
Yes.
Director Martin, your vote?
Yes.
Vice President Natoli, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. This item passes.
Thank you, Mr. Vergoots. 4.4, you're going to give us a status report on the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act implementation activities. It's your show. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, President Atkins. We've been busy. This update provides both a 6-month look ahead and also identifies key issues that we've been involved in recently. And I'm just going to run through the staff report. There have been a number of things that have happened from the technical front. The groundwater basin budget, the water budget, will be provided to stakeholders by October 7th. There's been significant work on the water budget, and we're looking to release that very soon as a draft document. We now have a consultant on board to perform the groundwater flow model peer review. That's Jacobs, and they've got some great technical chops, and so we're glad they're on board. They'll be working with United Water Conservation District downstream as well. An additional geologic cross-section has been prepared that goes down the river valley, and that will be added into the draft hydrogeologic conceptual model report. We continue to make progress on site access agreement. I need to thank Vice President Natoli for providing us a way to reach out to the county and request expedited review of permits. And so thank you. And we're told from the county that we should have a permit, air quotes, mid-October or end of October. And we continue to communicate with the city of Santa Clarita about some of the details in its permit. We've continued to work on outreach as well. And Kathy, Tara, I can just quickly summarize these, but if you want to jump in, just jump in. Of course, we completed the hydrogeologic conceptual model workshop, start to finish. There was a lot of effort in that, both with the stakeholder advisory committee, the workshop, then the follow-up with the committee after that. So that's complete. We're keeping the website up to date. In terms of fiscal matters, we continue to we've executed the round 3 grant agreement. So far, between the two agreements, we've invoiced DWR for up to $381,763. That's money coming back to the GSP development. In terms of a 6-month look ahead, a ton going on. We're going to be looking at the monitoring and reporting program and the sampling and analysis plan. Those are things that are required by regulation, and so we'll be working on those, and those will be rolled into the final GSP. We continue updating the groundwater flow model. We will continue on the site access agreements related to the studies for the groundwater and surface water interactions. The water budget, as I mentioned, will be going out to stakeholders by October 7th. That's the draft. On the hydrogeologic conceptual model, we'll be including a new cross-section. And the reason that's important, this new cross-section F to F prime, is it goes right, it goes right down the riverbed in a number of locations. And so it's important that we add this to the hydrogeologic conceptual model. A lot of the other cross-sections we have cross the river. This one goes down the river. So that'll be helpful. Also, in the next 6 months, we will be working on sustainable management criteria. This is going to be another very heavy lift where we look at what kinds of conditions could cause these undesirable results that the Department of Water Resources has told us to look at. We'll be developing projects and management actions, also required by regulation. So in the event it looks like undesirable results could take place, projects and management actions are the kinds of things that are used to make sure that those undesirable results don't take place within the implementation period, 20-year period. And we just keep trucking. In terms of under the challenges, we've already talked about the site access agreement, but I do want to mention to your board that We're getting closer to having approval from LA County and the city to be able to enter the field and install equipment. Not clear to me or others on the team when we'll have approval to enter the property controlled by 5 Point. May be a while. And so upon approval of the county and the city, we plan to implement field activities. And at some point in the future, if we're able to get access to the 5 Point property, that would require a separate mobilization of equipment, and that would have budget implications. But at this point, we don't have a way to, we're not sure that that's going to happen, but I think we're going to move ahead. We'll check in with 5 Point again, but ultimately I think we'll move ahead with the field activity and try and pick up the 5 Point properties later, but there would be additional costs. And that's it. That's the update on the work plan.
Thank you, Mr. Vergoots. I'm just going to open it to the board. Are there any comments or questions to Mr. Vergoots?
Mr. President, Vice President Foley, I just wanted to say, you know, staff, you're just not busy enough. You need more to do. I don't know how you accomplish what you do. Thank you. Thank you for everything you do.
Good comment. Thank you. Anything further from the board? Hearing nothing, opening it to public comment. 4.4. Hearing none, we're going to move on to 4.5. Mr. Vergoots is going to give us an update on the IRWM and Measure W processes. Go ahead, Mr. Vergoots.
You're on mute, Rick.
Thank you. I covered up my screen with the presentation. I didn't realize I was still muted. So, Uni, can you allow me to share my screen? Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so this is a brief update, and your board has seen these before. Although, Mr. Bryden, you haven't seen these before, but I think you'll recognize the interrelationship.
I know the guy that wrote it.
So we have a number of efforts underway in the watershed. We've got the IRWM planning efforts, the Measure W efforts, those are in green on the map, and the IRWM efforts are this red area, which is shared with the green down below. And then we've got the GSA efforts, which are smaller, but certainly no less important. And there are a number of things that we're all doing that interact. And here are some updates. We've executed the round 3 grant agreement since our last update to your board. That plus the round 2 grant agreement will offset or bring up to $1.3 million of revenue into the GSA budget. We're continuing to engage with the downstream entities to explore the watershed coordinator grant funding. This is something we talked with your board about in, I want to say July, but it doesn't look like it's going to get sufficient support. So we'll let you know when we talk with you next time. But this was the watershed coordinator that was funded through the State Department of Conservation that could help GSAs in coordination. But as I said, there isn't widespread support at this point downstream. Okay, let's see. Next, IRWM. It did submit a grant application for 6 projects. In May, we received a draft award for about $10.6 million for the region. We anticipated a notice of final award in July. We didn't get it. There was a challenge to the draft award provided by the Greater Los Angeles County IRWM region, both to Upper Santa Clara and our partners in Ventura, the Watersheds Coalition of Ventura. And we worked with Watersheds Coalition of Ventura to respond to that. And ultimately, DWR upheld the draft awards for Upper Santa Clara and WCBC. Press release from Santa Clarita Valley Water Agency will be sent out very soon. Measure W, not a lot of new activity here. The two stormwater recharge projects that we talked with your board about last time have been approved by the steering committee. They passed the scoring committee, the oversight committee, and so LA County Board of Supervisors needs to bless that and approve the funding. There's a new call for projects that's open. So in addition to these stormwater projects that I mentioned, there's a new call for projects that's open. We understand the city may be seeking money for a technical study for stormwater infiltration for an area behind Via Princesa, the Metrolink station. Ultimately, the projects that are submitted will go through a review process through May, and money is allocated in fiscal year 21-22. Lots of existing alignment between all these efforts. The GSA grant, round 3 grant, provides money for 2 groundwater recharge studies. In terms of IRWIM, the city and the Santa Clara River Conservancy are leading an Arundo removal project. Arundo removal is also important for watershed health, and we expect that'll be part of solutions described in the groundwater sustainability plan. And then in terms of Upper Santa Clara River, IRWIM, and Measure W, money is coming in for the 2 stormwater projects, one city-led and one is county-led. Future alignment, usual suspects here. Support of groundwater recharge projects and Arundo removal. These are all important for the watershed. With IRWIM, we expect more of these kinds of projects and more of these kinds of projects with Measure W. And that's all I have for this PowerPoint.
Thank you, Mr. Vergoots. Good job. Any comments or questions from the board?
May I, BJ?
Go ahead, Mr. Keller.
You make comment regarding the Arunda, and I know that for as long as I've been on the city council, which now is 20 years, sweet Lord, but we have been addressing this issue of the Arunda. Where do we stand today compared to 10, 15 years ago? Are we winning the battle, losing the battle? Where are we at on that? Because I will tell you, over the years, there has been a tremendous amount of money expended on trying to eradicate the Arunda and the riverbeds. Go ahead, please.
We're still very much in the battle. I don't think we've won. There are a lot of areas that still have Arundo, and one of the problems that we've faced is we don't have a good, durable program to make sure that after it's removed that it doesn't come back. So there's still a lot of work to do on this. Director Keller.
Well, I thank you for your comments, and I know it's a kind of a difficult question to probably answer, but somewhere in this equation, we need to figure out how, when we get rid of it, we're rid of it in that area at least. It doesn't come back, you know, a year or two later, and we got the same problem that we just eradicated for $2 million 2 years before. So I'm being hypothetical, obviously, but I know it's a very serious issue, and I look forward to hearing when we can find a solution, if you will, that will, when we take an action, it will be permanent. Thank you very much.
Did I hear you answer Mr. Keller's question. Are we winning or losing the Arundel battle?
We're in the middle.
Yeah, thank you, Director Cooper.
Okay, so
feel like
it's in the
we're-
heat of the battle. Okay.
Yeah, I did say we were still in the battle, but yeah, we're in the middle.
Just to let Director Keller know, we had been working with Congresswoman Katie Hill when she was in office to see about seeking some federal funds to help with the Arundel removal. We had gone down to the river. We looked at it, kind of looked at how much money it was going to take it out from here to Ventura. And right about that same time, let me tell you, the thing that kills it, Bob, is Roundup. Is they cut it off, and then every stalk, they wipe Roundup on the opening of the stalk, and that will kill it. Well, about that time, the thing came out that said you can't use Roundup, that it's causing all kinds of problems. So there's some issues out there now of how do you kill it? You can't, burning it doesn't do it, pulling it out doesn't do it. The stuff is the plant from a little shop of horrors. So they've got to figure out a way to kill it, and then it takes some money to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything further from the board?
I was just going to add from talking to Heather Miranda, who was on that same tour with us with Congresswoman Hill. She said that if we don't continually work on it, it will get worse. And I thought Director Martin had some experience with that too in his prior water district area. So my understanding is we need to stay in the battle too.
Let me add to that, President Atkins. Yes, we may not be at the end, or we may not even be in the middle, but we cannot give up the fight. It's estimated that we lose 20,000 acre-feet a year of water from our aquifer on an annual basis. That's just a rough estimate, but if that's the case, and it's probably true, we cannot give up the fight. We got to keep working it, and maybe one of these days there'll be a solution that will put us ahead of the game, but we simply cannot give up the fight.
Right.
The analogy that comes to mind is the project to paint the Golden Gate Bridge. They never can stop. And that's basically what we're facing. So, okay, nothing further from the board on this issue? Open it to public comment. Go ahead. Last call. Last call. Okay, nothing from the public on this one. We'll go to item 5, consideration of possible future agenda items.
I have one, Mr. Atkins.
Go ahead, Mr. Cooper. Go ahead.
One that I'd like to bring to the board to get an understanding of is the Groundwater Advisory Committee, Groundwater Sustainability Advisory Committee that we put together had an issue that came up at their last meeting that I'm sure our board hadn't heard of. We have an election coming up, and there's a couple of people that are running that are on the Groundwater Sustainability Advisory Committee that are running for office in the Valley, which is great. You know, we'd love to see people run for office and people get involved. The one thing that these people did is they put on their ballot as their occupation is Groundwater Sustainability Advisor, and both of them were very much the same. Water Sustainability Advisor and Groundwater Sustainability Advisor. The election code says that your ballot statement should be your occupation. What you do most of your time, what takes up your day and your livelihood is what it should be on your occupation, whatever that is. So these people used their Groundwater Sustainability Advisory Committee as their occupation. Well, they meet, what, once every 2 months for about 2 hours. That's obviously not an occupation. So what they've put on the ballot statement is untrue. And that's beside the point. That was a county issue. The county elections people, they don't like to change those things. They don't like to get involved. And so it went on through. However, the one thing that we did have is when we put the Groundwater Sustainability Advisory Committee together, we put together a code of ethics. And in that code of ethics, it stated that, let me look it up here. Members shall never use the position to solicit for personal gain. Well, what I've seen is these people are lying. They're untruthful. And they're using that position as an occupation for personal gain. Now, getting elected, most people think isn't for personal gain. But yes, when you get elected, you receive benefits. People that are on the water board receive medical insurance, dental insurance, vision insurance, and they get a stipend for attending meetings on a regular basis. So yes, what they're doing is putting something on the ballot that's to confuse the public or make them think, the public think that they have a qualification that they certainly don't, and using their position on the advisory committee to do that. People on the advisory committee were unhappy about it, brought the issue forward to some of the directors on our board, and asked if we'd take a look. We had legal look at it. Legal looked at it and said, you know, the county said that was okay. It's hard to overturn what the county said. However, as a director, what I see them doing is using that position for personal gain. What they signed as a part of the ethics code for the advisory committee. I believe we need to have a recommendation back from the advisory committee regarding this. And we didn't put in when we did the code of ethics because we thought people will abide by a code of ethics. These people didn't. So we didn't put any consequences in. Well, consequences can be anything that we determine, which is anything from a warning to censure to removing from the advisory committee. Obviously, these people are not there for the benefit of the advisory committee. I would like to have the advisory committee make a recommendation back to us for what they should do for ethics violation, and us to take that under consideration at our next. I don't know when the advisory committee meets again, but I certainly would like to see that brought up at the advisory committee. If need be, I'll come and present it. But it should be talked about at the advisory committee that they broke the code of ethics, and it needs to be looked at by our board. And if necessary, remove them from the committee, get new people on the committee. By then, the election is long over, but that's not the issue. The issue is they did this for personal gain, and that was improper.
Mr. President.
Go ahead, Mr. Bunn.
Yeah. What I understand Director Cooper to be requesting is, well, I'm not sure what he's requesting. He can certainly request an agenda item for a future meeting of the board.
Yes.
As far as getting advisory committee input into it, the advisory committee had determined not to put it on their own agenda. So I don't think that this board can make a formal request to the advisory committee at this point without discussing it and putting it on the agenda. That would have to come first.
Okay, then what I would ask is we put this on the agenda for our next board to review what has gone on and determine whether our code of ethics is violated and what action should be taken.
Okay, that's an appropriate request. And then I guess the best thing to do would be to ask the president whether he'll put that on the agenda, and then your decision can be appealed to the board if they don't.
May the record reflect it. I will give a second to that.
Okay, so is that appropriate, Mr. Vaughn? A motion and a second? I'll presume Mr. Cooper has made his suggestion.
Yeah, that's certainly appropriate.
Okay, and then
Yes,
we have a
thank-
second by Mr. Keller.
Yes.
Okay, so it's open for discussion to the board members.
No, you can't, all you can, at this point, you can't the merits. All you can do is
Okay.
put it on the agenda or not.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second to put it on the agenda.
Yeah. Can I ask a question? How does our chair normally put things on the agenda? In other words, do we need to vote on that motion and second, or can our chair just hear those comments and decide to put it on the agenda without a vote of the GSA board?
May I respond, Mr. President?
Yes, please.
The typical method would be for the chair to decide whether to put it on the agenda or not. And then if someone doesn't like that decision, they can appeal to the board, and it's ultimately the board that decides. And I started to say that, but I understood that to have been kind of preempted by someone offering a motion, and that's appropriate too.
Okay. Well, I'm of the opinion that its rightful places in our next agenda. And if there's, without dissent on the part of the board, it's so ordered.
Okay, that works.
Okay, very good. All right, now we move to adjournment. My directive here says that we go to a vote, but from what I understand, you don't have to do a vote. You can just say goodbye. So we stand adjourned. Is that right, Mr. Bunn?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you all for your time.
Have a good evening.
Good to see you all. Russ, welcome.
You.
Thank you.
Yes, good job, Russ.
Yes.
Welcome.
See you later.
Bye.